He had everything. He had all the information he needed for the upcoming confrontation, which he knew was fast approaching. He also had additional information that he would try to squeeze into the confrontation, if it could be called a confrontation. Hell, who was he trying to convince? Of course there would be a confrontation. Even now, at this late hour, he still didn't know what form the confrontation would take, how exactly it would end. The information he had been given led him to believe that the denouement would take place tonight. For a split second, he wished he could just walk away from it all, drive away and... What? That wouldn't solve anything. Besides, it would disappoint people, annoy and upset those who were already annoyed and upset, and he would make everything even worse. The only real option was to stick to his plan and hope that everyone else would stick to theirs, playing their parts. In fact, he had no doubt that they would. He parked his car in his designated spot in the underground garage, next to his wife's BMW, and took the elevator to the 4th floor. Mike Cooper stepped out of the elevator, turned right, took a few more steps, slower than usual, and found himself at the door of the apartment. He apologized, but it was an apartment. The monthly rent was too high to call it just an apartment, which he shared with his wife, Nicola, who had lived there for 10 years. Closing the front door behind him, he sensed a tense atmosphere. Maybe today is the day, he thought. Everything he saw and heard pointed to it. He really hoped it would be, because he wasn't sure how much longer he could pretend that everything was fine, that he was as clueless as Nicky seemed to think he was. He hung his jacket on a hook in the hallway, grabbed the doorknob to the living room, and said briefly, "Let's do this." He smiled, but there was no humor in his smile. I hope Nicky is ready to face reality, grit her teeth, get back on her feet, and all the other cliches I can apply to this shitty situation, he thought to himself. Despite the seriousness of the situation, he allowed himself a brief smirk. When he opened the door, she was sitting on the couch. Her face was a mixture of emotions, ranging from fear to horror, from sympathy to apathy. Maybe it was just the wind? He struggled to suppress a laugh. If what he suspected was going to happen tonight, he didn't want to ruin the situation by laughing at his own jokes, no matter how funny they seemed to him. His ability to hide behind jokes in awkward or tense situations had always annoyed Nicky. Damn it, he thought. "Hi, honey," she said to him in a tone that sounded like, what? Anticipation? Nervousness? "Please sit down. We need to talk." Damn, he thought. Looks like we're playing cliché bingo today. Well, eyes down, eyes in, as they say in the best bingo halls. He realized that there would be no peeking today, as her ample cleavage was hidden from view, and she was dressed very modestly, as if she were attending the funeral of someone she didn't know well enough or cared enough about to wear mourning clothes. It occurred to him that this was exactly the case, because it was the funeral of their marriage, which she had proven she didn't know well enough and certainly didn't care about anymore. He sat down opposite her, placing a coffee table between them. He put his leather bag under the table. She was probably expecting him to sit next to her. He could tell by the hurt look on her face. What a pity, he thought. Life doesn't always turn out the way you want it to. "Okay, Nicky," he said. "What do you want to talk about?" She swallowed nervously before continuing. "The thing is, Mike, I don't love you anymore." Although he knew perfectly well what was about to happen, the words spoken by his supposedly loving wife shook him to the core. He exhaled a stunned breath of pain. Her face reflected her horror. No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I still love you, but not like that. Not the way a wife should love her husband." She paused before continuing. "I love you as a good man and a good friend, but not as a husband. Not anymore. Not anymore." He asked quietly, perhaps with some fear, "Is there someone else? Another man in your life?" She nodded. "Yes, there is, please." You have to believe me, I didn't want this to happen. I met him at the office about 6 months ago. He's the new owner of the company I work for. I was asked to show him around the office and the building, and we both fell in love instantly over a cup of coffee in that cute little Italian cafe below our office. The place where you sometimes met for romantic dates between work when you had a few minutes free? He asked sadly. She smiled, remembering her first meeting with her lover. Mike's words made her tense, and she must have realized her mistake because she blushed with embarrassment. "That was tactless of me, Mike," she said. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you." Mike shrugged in agreement. "Please, go on. Tell me what you wanted to say." She swallowed nervously. It was as close to love at first sight as the word hell is to a swear word. Neither of us suspected it would turn into something more. At first it was innocent. We went out to lunch and stuff. She paused before continuing. But then it started to grow and grow. We started holding hands, and before we could figure out what was happening, before we could get a grip on ourselves, so to speak, we realized that our first feelings were right, that we weren't just falling in love, we were already in love. There was a spark between us. And then we made love for the first time, and I realized it was beautiful. Mike nodded. "Was that about 5 months ago? Which one of you decided to end the sexual relationship with me? Him or you?" She made a soothing gesture with her hands. "Well, to be honest, it was a mutual decision. He didn't like that I was sleeping with someone else, even though, or maybe especially because, that other person was my husband, and I didn't like the idea of making love to you because it felt like cheating. I'm sorry, Mike, but that's how I felt. I have to admit that refusing to have sex with me didn't make me happy, because I felt even more guilty thinking that you weren't getting any love, while my lover had all my attention." Mike looked at her. "Am I really going to do this?" he thought. He shook his head. His voice was full of pain, resignation, and sadness. "I guess I owe you an apology, Nikki." Confusion flashed across her face like summer lightning. "You? Apologize to me? For what?" He shrugged. "Nikki, you're one of the most open, honest, and straightforward people I've ever known, maybe even more than anyone else, so I can't imagine you would just change on me for no reason. I've come to the conclusion that you must have a good explanation for what you did and what you're doing now. I apologize for what I did or didn't do, for not being man enough for you, for pushing you away and forcing you to seek comfort in the arms of another man. That's why I'm asking for your forgiveness. Forgive me for letting you down, for letting our marriage down, and for letting myself down." He looked at her, then lowered his shoulders and his eyes, as if unable to look at the woman he had betrayed, albeit unconsciously and involuntarily. Nikki was ashamed of his words. She had expected Mike to be angry, to rage and call her a slut. But even in her wildest dreams, she had not expected Mike, her usually sensible husband, to take all the responsibility for her betrayal, to take all the blame for her affair. She just wanted to leave for her lover, divorce Mike as honestly and cleanly as possible, and then, when the time came, marry her new man. She thought Mike would get over the breakup quickly and find someone else. She looked at Mike and said, "I thought you would get over it, find another woman, and hoped that someday we could be friends. But with the way things have turned out, considering how you feel about it now, I doubt that's possible. I think the situation is out of control." As she spoke to him, tears welled up in her eyes. "Mike, lift your head up. Look at me. Look at me, please. This is not your fault in any way. I didn't realize how much you valued me for who I am, but I can't help thinking that maybe I'm not as perfect as you think I am. I had an affair with another man, but it's all my fault. It has nothing to do with you or your qualities as a man or a lover, absolutely nothing. Please believe me." He looked at her, smiled what is commonly referred to as a manly smile, and said, "Thank you for saying that, Even if it's not entirely true, I'm grateful to you for trying to cheer me up with this little innocent lie. I'm not lying. Listen, I don't want you to suffer or pine for me. That won't do anyone any good, especially you. My life is now devoted to another man. You must move on and find yourself a new woman. A woman who can love you the way a woman should love a man. I'm sorry I can't be that woman for you, not anymore, but that's the way it is. You'll find someone else. I know you will. He shrugged. I don't think that will happen, Nikki. I don't even think it's possible. 12 years ago, you came into my life and filled the place in my heart that belonged to Nikki. Now you've left that place in my heart. But it's still there, Nikki. It's a hole the size of Nikki that no other woman will ever be able to fill. I doubt I'll ever date anyone again. I feel like marrying someone else is an impossible dream. After all, if what you say is true and I never did anything to push you away, how can I trust anyone else? Besides, how could anyone ever replace you? Nikki wiped her eyes with a small white handkerchief. Oh, I'm sorry I hurt you. Please don't let this situation make you bitter, Mike. You deserve so much better. I'm so ashamed that I'm putting you through this, but it's happening and I can't change it. But I'm not worth much more than that to you, am I, Nikki? She trembled. That's not the point. I'm sorry it turned out this way. I want a divorce. Unreasonable behavior will be a good reason. I feel like it will go through relatively quickly. To make it easier for you, I've already packed everything I want to take with me for the time being into the car, and I'm going to move into an apartment I'll be sharing with my lover tonight. We'll sort out the rest later. He ran his hand over his face and then said, We had so many dreams, a nice house, a big garden, and children. Well, those were my dreams. Maybe they weren't exactly the same as yours. She smiled when he talked about their dreams, but burst into tears when he continued. But those dreams are dead now, Nikki. And when a dream dies, what happens to the dreamer? Does he go on living, Nikki? Or does part of him die too, following the dream into oblivion? Please, she whispered, choking. Don't say that. You sound like you're going to do something stupid. Stupid? There was bitterness in his voice. How stupid was I to marry you? Was it that stupid? Or are you afraid that I'll kill myself and leave an indelible stain on your new relationship? Why should you care what happens to me in the future? I don't understand. Nikki was hurt by his words, and it showed in her voice. Please, Mike, don't be like that. No matter what you think or feel, I do care about what happens to you. I just don't want to think about you getting hurt or dying. He nodded. I'm sorry, Nikki. It's just still too fresh and painful for me. She wrinkled her nose. Yes, I understand. Anyway, he continued, I probably shouldn't ask you this, and you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but is he better in bed than me? Is he a better lover? Is there any difference between him and me? For a split second, she looked puzzled, but then it was as if a light bulb had gone off in her head. Well, sex with him is better than with you, but that's no insult to you, Mike. He's not that much better lover than you are. He's different, but it's not because he's much better at making love than you are. It's because he's my other half, the man I'm meant to be with forever. He made a pained expression, then changed the subject, trying to get back to where they were. Is your lover married, Nikki? She nodded. Yes, he's married, but they're close to divorce because their marriage has been virtually sexless for... Mike interrupted her. Don't tell me about it. Nikki continued as if she hadn't heard his sarcastic remark. It's been a virtually sexless marriage for 10 years. Mike snorted contemptuously and muttered, Sexless marriage? Welcome to my world. Nikki ignored his remark and continued as if he hadn't said anything. In fact, they've only made love twice in the last 8 years. This was it. It was the perfect opportunity for Mike to not only insert the information he had into the conversation, it was a wide-open target, and he was going to mercilessly drive the ball into the top left corner of the goal. He was so pleased with himself that he promised to light a candle at St. Ethelwald's Church and make a donation to the collection box. He suddenly abandoned his role as the unhappy one and spoke to Nikki in a conversational tone. "You know, that's very interesting. Really very, very interesting. Do you believe in coincidences, Nikki?" A little stunned by his sudden and surprising change of character, she replied cautiously, I don't quite understand what you mean, Mike. What does that have to do with anything?" "What does it have to do with anything, dear Nikki? Let me explain. If, as you say, your assistant and his wife have only made love twice in the last 8 years, I'm just wondering what happy coincidence led to them getting pregnant both times. Care to comment, Nikki?" She was even more puzzled. "I don't understand what you're talking about, Mike. He doesn't have any children." Mike smiled to himself at her slip, which only confirmed what he already knew. "Really?" he asked. "Wait a minute." He leaned under the coffee table, pulled out a leather bag, and took out a large plastic folder labeled Gaines Lipper Legal Investigations. He placed the bag on the table. A chill ran through her. She didn't understand what was happening, but she knew it didn't bode well. Mike pulled an A4 sheet of paper from the folder and began to read. "Douglas Williams, married to Sally Williams, 41 Larkspur Drive, Midsummer Park. Father of 2 children by Sally, an 8-year-old boy named Simon, and a 6-year-old boy named Vincent." "How do you explain that, Nikki?" "They must have made a mistake. It's a mistake. That's impossible. He told me they didn't have any children. Anyway, how did you find this information? Isn't that illegal?" "Of course it's not illegal," he growled. Now he was starting to get angry, and he didn't want that, at least not yet. "It's not illegal because Gaines Leeper is one of the best law firms in the region, and they have their own detective agency, so they know the law." Nikki felt uncomfortable. "How long have you known?" she asked quietly. "About 3 months. Actually, you remember that moment very well. At least I do. I hinted that I'd like to resume our intimate relationship, but you kept putting it off, saying you needed a little more time to restore your libido. You remember how I suddenly stopped asking you for sex. You even thanked me, if you remember. You thanked me for stopping what you called harassing you. You promised to make it up to me in other ways, saying that the lack of sex was just a temporary pause and that we would eventually return to a normal sex life. But you lied to me. You never kept your promise to make it up to me. And now I know that your nonsense about a dry spell was complete bullshit. You never intended to sleep with me again, did you?" Nikki was now crying for real. "When did you hire the detectives?" "Number. You see, a woman came to my office one day. She made an appointment. Her name was Sally Williams. She gave me this paper, a copy of some important excerpts from a report she had commissioned from private investigators. Needless to say, I was devastated. She played me the recordings, one of which was you and him mockingly deciding that I would be deprived of sex. That's why I stopped, as you put it, hitting on you. Then I followed Sally's advice and got tested for STDs, including HIV. We're both healthy, and it's all thanks to you, your lover, and your carefree antics. We both started thinking about how to get back at you both, and we decided to get revenge. We enjoyed it so much that we did it again and again, so that one simple act of revenge turned into a friends with benefits relationship, which has now started to change and evolve. Will this develop into a real romantic relationship? I don't know. In the short term, I don't care, because all I know is that we, Sally and I, help each other. It's not just about the sex, although I have to admit that it's also damn good. We also support and love each other, something we should have gotten from our spouses, but they decided to steal from us and give to someone else. If it turns into a long-term relationship, well, so be it. You might be interested to know that this was his 3rd affair. and she decided it would be his last, as his promises never to cheat again turned out to be empty words. "Nikki, we're getting a divorce, but on my terms, and I'm filing for adultery." Nikki began to get angry. "That's complete nonsense. How can you file for divorce on the grounds of adultery when you slept with another man yourself?" He laughed. "What does that have to do with anything? If you want to file a counterclaim for adultery, go ahead. I don't care." She changed the subject, still feeling somewhat confused by the turn of events. Her lover was a liar, and her husband was entertaining his lover's wife. What the hell just happened? Suddenly overcome by an unhealthy curiosity, she couldn't help asking the question she probably shouldn't have asked. "How is she in bed, Mike?" He looked her in the eyes and smiled, but there was no humor or warmth in his smile. His gaze was hard, unyielding. "Well, she's gorgeous. In fact, she walks like an otter," he said, nodding for emphasis. For some reason, his remark made her shudder. "Oh my God, what horrible things you say about her. What does walks like an otter even mean?" Mike continued to stare at her, then said in a hoarse but loud voice, "That's because she's always wet for me." She let out a high-pitched squeal and ran out of the apartment, shack, yurt, or whatever it was in a rage. She tried to slam the door, but it was a modern door with a security system that made a farting sound when you tried to slam it. He heard the elevator take her down to the underground garage. He shook his head and laughed. "Poor Nikki! One sound and she's gone." He took his cell phone out of his pocket and dialed his mistress's number. "Hi. Yes, it just happened, exactly as the detective said. But it didn't go as they planned. I think I upset her, but I'll tell you about that later. Are you coming here, or should I come to you?" "Okay. I'll put the kettle on. Am I right in understanding that your boys will be staying with your parents for the next few days? Tomorrow we need to change the locks on your house and my apartment, and find a lawyer to sort out our finances." "Yes. I asked the lawyers to send her the divorce papers by first-class mail to her secret hideaway, where I assume she is heading now. It will be a nice surprise for her. Well, at least a surprise. Will her lover meet her tonight, after his fake business trip to Doncaster? Maybe I should have told her that her other half has another girlfriend in Yorkshire. Oh, well, never mind." He said goodbye, put his phone in his pocket, and went to the kitchen to put the kettle on. Returning to the living room, he suddenly realized that for the first time in several months, his anger had been replaced, at least in part, by a deep sadness at the loss of the woman who had been his life for 12 years. Everything suddenly seemed very real to him. He knew that the time he spent with Sally would help him, but even so, the situation would still be painful. When he heard the electric kettle start up, he realized he still had time to put fresh sheets on the bed for his lover, which he did. As he did so, he shook his head and smiled. Walks like an otter? Where the hell did that come from? He thought. Roxy and I are not very different from most people when it comes to our relationship and marriage. We met at a party and went on a few cautious first dates. We discovered that we enjoyed spending time together. We started spending more and more time together. After a few months, we became lovers. After we got married, we lived in an apartment for 2 years until we saved enough money to buy a house. We bought our first home, which needed serious repairs. After some improvements, we had equity that was expected to increase significantly in value. I had a stable job, and Roxy got a job as an English teacher at a high school. Although Roxy never seems to get sick, I think she brings germs home. Over the past few months, I've had the flu, a bad cough, and today I'm going to the doctor to have my throat checked. It was Monday, and I decided not to go to work. My doctor's appointment was at 1 o'clock, and it was already half past. For the first time, I got home before Roxy. I'm not usually home before 6, so I decided to surprise her by making dinner. When I turned on my phone, I saw a text message from an unknown number. "Sorry, Webb. Don't shoot the messenger." There were no voice messages. Okay, they knew my name, but the message didn't make any sense to me. Maybe they thought they had found the right Webb, but they were wrong. Pulling into the garage, I saw the hedge trimmers and felt guilty for not trimming the hedge like I promised last weekend. That's life, I guess. Maybe next weekend? Hell, why not trim it now? It was only 3 o'clock and Roxy wouldn't be home for another hour and a half. I went into the house and turned on the TV, mostly for background noise. As I climbed the stairs, I took off my clothes on each step. By the time I reached the bedroom, I was holding my shirt in my hands. I heard a strange noise and stopped. Probably something on the roof. I grabbed my tracksuit and changed in less than a minute. I took the bandage off the penicillin injection and decided to gargle. It had been several years, maybe even 10, since I had last had a sore throat. There was some talk show on TV that didn't interest me at all. My attention was drawn to the news announcement. "Is your child's teacher on the sex offender registry? You'll be shocked by what our reporters have discovered." Damn. It must be a joke. God, Roxy has to see this. I pressed record and went out to the yard to work. The announcement really intrigued me. With all the checks and controls, how could this have slipped through? As I was gathering my clippings after a great haircut, a news van slowed down and slowly drove down the street in front of my house. They stopped and rolled down the window. "Are you Webb Lewis?" "Who's asking?" The guy jumped out of the passenger door and hurried to the front of the van. "Jim Barnes, Channel 6. Are you Webb Lewis?" "Yes." "What's going on?" The driver, who turned out to be the cameraman, was busily setting up his equipment. Barnes waited impatiently for the signal. "Ready," said the cameraman, aiming the equipment he was holding on his shoulder at me. Barnes got straight to the point. "I'm Jim Barnes, a reporter. I'm with Webb Lewis, the husband of Roxy Lewis. Sir, can you comment on how your wife teaches while being a registered sex offender?" "What are you talking about? That's the funniest thing I've ever heard. Roxy couldn't be a sex offender. Turn off the camera." When they both froze, I grabbed a rake and hedge clippers. Seeing that my angry stare didn't faze them, I returned to the garage. The two idiots followed me, but at least they stayed outside when the garage door closed. Roxy, a sex offender? No way. I grabbed my cell phone and saw that I had 10 missed calls and 6 text messages. 2 calls and 1 message were from Roxy. The message simply said, "Call me. Urgent." Roxy answered right away, her voice trembling with fear. "Webb, this is a nightmare. They think I'm a sex offender." "Who thinks that?" "The principal, the inspector, and some guy from the county legal department. I've been suspended from work until they figure out what's going on. I'm shaking. This is some kind of terrible mistake." "Where are you right now?" "I'm sitting in my car. I'm too upset to drive." "Well, don't rush home. A news van just pulled up at your house asking about you as a sex offender." "What are you doing at home?" "Oh, right. How was your doctor's appointment?" "Tonsillitis. I got a shot and didn't want to go back to work. I was trimming the hedge when the news van pulled up. Let me see. Wow. Now there are 3 cars. They're standing there talking. I wouldn't go home if I were you. Maybe you can get to your parents' house." Tears. "How can this be? This is crazy. I'll call you back." I realized that Roxy was deeply shaken, and it was understandable. Someone had to be held accountable for this mistake. Grabbing a diet soda, I turned my attention back to the TV. This is Alina Wallace reporting from Happy Heights High School. We have received information that 2 teachers at this school are registered sex offenders. After a brief investigation, we were able to confirm this horrific discovery. Cody Harper, a physical education teacher, and Roxy Lewis, an English teacher, are both listed on the state sex offender registry. The text I had received earlier now made sense. I knew Alina when she was Smith, not under the pseudonym Wallace. We dated, and at one point I thought we would get married. But life pulled me in one direction and her in another. We decided to part ways amicably and see what the future would bring. Somewhere along the way, I met Roxy and fell in love with her. Alina was unhappy with me. Apparently, I should have been able to read her mind from 1,000 miles away. Deep down, she believed that we would get back together after graduation and find good jobs. I replied to the message Alina had sent me that morning. I understand, Miss Smith. Maybe we can all meet up when this storm blows over. The TV was showing photos of criminals. I felt so sorry for Roxy. It's amazing how quickly misinformation can spread. For a split second, I thought Roxy was guilty. But that thought was quickly suppressed by my respect for Roxy. She couldn't be a sex offender, not now, not then, not ever. Alina continued her report. At this time, both employees have been placed on paid leave. This is Alina Wallace reporting. The full version of the news, which aired at 5 p.m., also featured a database expert. He talked at length about why government databases are so easy to hack. Good for him. Let all the computer geniuses know that government databases are easy prey for hackers. I couldn't relax. I had a knot in my stomach. When the phone rang, I didn't answer the call from an unknown number. Over the next 20 minutes, I did this 3 more times before Roxy's number appeared on the screen. Hey, baby, are you on your way? Yes and no. I'm being followed. I called my parents and told them about this circus. Instead of trying to get away from whoever is following me, I'm going to my father's country club. There's a security gate that will block my pursuers. He keeps his golf cart there, which is allowed on public roads. I'll change and take the cart to his house. Great idea. There must be a swarm of reporters here because there are about 20 people outside right now. Someone's ringing the doorbell every few minutes. I'm not answering. That's weird. I hope they kill whoever did this to me. Not just you. They named another teacher, Cody something. Do you know him? I was surprised by the lack of an immediate response. Yes, he's the gym teacher, she repeated, somewhat slowly, which was strange. Let me know when you get to your parents' house. Yeah, what a nightmare. Get rid of it, Webb. When Roxy got to her parents' house, we talked again. She was exhausted and decided to go to bed. There were still half a dozen trucks outside the house. Sleep was a rare occurrence in my bedroom. I lay there staring at the ceiling, counting the sparkles and analyzing the clues. It would have been strange if there was one teacher on the list, but 2 from the same school. My lie detector was flashing bright red. Someone had it in for these 2, but who and why? I thought I was fast asleep, but not so fast that I couldn't hear the sound of breaking glass. When I turned on the light, I found a brick among the shards of glass. Someone had tied a note to the brick and thrown it through my living room window. The note contained threats, so I called the police. They discovered that my garage had also been covered in threatening graffiti. When they found out that the accused teacher was Roxy, the police changed their attitude toward me and started treating me like dirt. After only a few hours of sleep, I struggled to get out of bed. Would the morning news simply repeat yesterday's lies and insinuations? I didn't have to wait long. The predators were the main topic of the news and monopolized the entire broadcast. Even the national news showed an excerpt from the interview. Alina had gained a little fame at the national level. She wore rings as if she were married, but her online profile said she was single. I know I'm biased, but she's a really good reporter. She holds her own. In the morning, I took a few hours off work to patch up the hole in the house with plywood. Before starting the repairs, I took a lot of photos. A neighbor helped with the graffiti. Most of it was removed, but some areas will need to be repainted. My insurance agent sent an appraiser to begin the damage assessment. TV vans kept getting in the way, but I refused to talk to them. I started work around 11. Before noon, I received another text message. "Don't miss the afternoon news, Miss Smith." Instead of going to lunch, I stayed in the break room where the TVs were. This is Elena Wallace. We've discovered a connection between two teachers. CCTV cameras caught them leaving together several times during lunch. What they're up to remains a mystery. We can only hope that no children are involved. Well, that should speed up the construction of the gallows. To hell with the law, hang them, and come up with an excuse later. This reminds me of the witch hunts in Salem. They tied a stone to the accused woman and threw her into the lake. If she swam, she was a witch and was burned at the stake. If she drowned, she was praised as a good woman at her funeral. The best news of the day came in the middle of the day. The soap operas were interrupted to show a press conference on the steps of the state legislature building. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We have received many questions about teachers and the sex offender registry. Our staff and consultants have determined that 3 days ago, the sex offender database was hacked. In 2 entries, the names, birth dates, and other information were replaced with the information of teachers involved in this case. We have fixed the problem and are investigating how the information was leaked. We apologize to the 2 teachers. This appears to be an act of revenge against them. The rest of the press conference proceeded as usual, with journalists and government officials making loud statements. The school district issued a statement assuring parents and students that all of its employees had been properly vetted and welcoming the teachers back. My call to Roxy went to voicemail, so I left her a message with the good news. She called back 10 minutes later. "Sorry, Webb. I talked to the school district. I've been suspended indefinitely. Many parents are adamantly opposed to me teaching their children." Bad news travels fast, and the truth takes time to repair the damage. Any idea who you 2 upset? Not really. I haven't talked to Cody and don't plan to. Thinking back on all my interactions with teachers and administrators, I can't think of anything. I'm not an activist, so I can't remember the last time I had a confrontation at school. They said you and Cody left for lunch. What does that mean? We just stopped by the office supply store for the class. Oh, I see. Will you be home today? Yes, I'll go back to the country club and pick up the car. See you later. Roxy showed up an hour later. The reporters weren't able to get an interview with her. We hugged and stood there for about 15 minutes. She was quietly sobbing. The state conference was the top story. After the weather forecast, there was a commercial, and then a big red headline appeared on the screen. Breaking news. Roxy and I sat down together on the couch and watched the program. This is Elena Wallace. We have just learned that Cody Harper and Roxy Lewis, teachers listed on the sex offender registry, were lovers. Although the police have not officially confirmed or denied this information, we have reason to believe that they are now planning to investigate both spouses for hacking the database. We are now convinced that the hacking of the sex offender database was indeed an act of revenge. I turned to Roxy, her face looking like that of a broken woman. Her mouth was open, but only moans and sighs escaped. Jumping up from the couch, Roxy screamed, "I'm sorry, Webb," and ran out to the garage. Her car sped away, and I sat there in a daze. Less than an hour later, a knock on the door confirmed Elena's prediction. The detective wanted to ask me a few questions. From, "When did I find out about Roxy's affair?" to, "Would you mind taking a polygraph test?" I had nothing to hide. The detective's questioning, and I realized that I had been a foolish, trusting husband. I passed the polygraph test with flying colors. I was completely exonerated. Apparently, Cody's wife had gotten ahead of me because my detective told the other detective, well, they weren't married. My attempts to contact Roxy ended in voicemail. My text messages went unanswered. When I received a text message from Elena, I decided to talk to the press. "Webb, would you agree to give me an interview on camera?" Will you be lenient with me, Miss Smith? She replied with a smiley face. I had to protect myself. Send me the questions. I'm not going to be ambushed. Elena's list of questions seemed reasonable, so we met for coffee. She looked even better in person than she did on TV, and I told her so. She apologized again for bringing bad news. After we finished our coffee, the scripted interview began. This is Elena Wallace, reporting live. With me is Webb Lewis, husband of wrongfully accused teacher Roxy Lewis. How are you feeling, Webb? As expected. Did you ever believe that Roxy was a sex offender? Not for a minute. I suspected something was wrong almost immediately. One teacher, maybe? Two at the same school? I didn't buy it. Did you know your wife was having an affair with Cody Harper? Number I found out when you said it on TV. I have no reports from investigators confirming or denying the affair. My gut tells me that yes, she had an affair. Roxy isn't responding to my attempts to contact her. How computer literate are you? I can write emails and browse websites. The only database I work with is in my home office. Have you been contacted by the police? Yes, I took a polygraph test. I am no longer a person of interest to the police. Elena deviated from the approved questions. Do you think any of your friends might have found out about Roxy's affair and decided to get revenge for you? Well, if Roxy was having an affair, I'd applaud whoever did it. I doubt the people who run this database are thrilled, but on the other hand, the next hack will be more difficult. So you're not angry with them? Not particularly. Yes, it unleashed an army of lunatics, but it also provided an opportunity to teach a lesson in high school. Hell, judging by the national media coverage, it gave schools across the country a chance to revisit a sensitive issue. Elena's next question returned to the approved list. Has everything calmed down in your neighborhood? Absolutely. The news vans are gone, the vandalism has been cleaned up. It seems like the local news really does feed on dirty laundry. This made Elena frown, but she quickly recovered. Especially when it comes to children. This is Elena Wallace reporting. After the bright lights faded, Elena whispered angrily to me. What was that last comment? Were you trying to embarrass me? I whispered back. You exposed the problems in my marriage. Why? Did you want me to cry? I was just giving you a chance to show off your improvisational skills. You did a great job. Elena's face softened. I'm sorry if I hurt you. I didn't mean to. I hope we can remain friends, maybe even more if your situation changes. We can and will if my situation changes. We parted with smiles, but without hugs or kisses. In the morning, as I drove to the office, I thought about Elena's comment about her friend who had defended me. What would I have done if I had found out about her affair in a different way? Would I have remained calm, cool, and collected? I doubt it. But in the end, Roxy got what she deserved. Although her name wasn't going to appear on the sex offender registry, most parents demanded that their children be transferred out of her class. I don't have children, so I couldn't understand them. According to the news, Roxy got an administrative job with the county government. When I found out that Cody Harper's wife had filed for divorce, I decided to contact her. In fact, I asked my lawyer to contact her lawyer, and they agreed to share their findings. Roxy and Cody had been sneaking out of work during lunch about twice a month. They had receipts from motels dating back to the beginning of the school year. Once could be forgiven, but not in this case. I filed for divorce. 10 days passed, and Roxy didn't call until she broke the silence. When I saw her name on the display, I answered, Roxy, what a surprise. I thought you ran off with Cody. Webb, I'm sorry. I was stupid. I acted like a teenager. I've learned my lesson. Isn't there any way we can work this out? Let's see. I have to spend the rest of my life with people wondering if I'm married to a promiscuous teacher and a sex offender? Tell me what kind of life that is. Her voice faltered. People will forget with time, Webb. Please. Maybe if the word promiscuous wasn't in that description, but it is. You killed my love for you, and for what? You'll live with that, I won't. Good night, Roxy. I love you, Webb, I really do. Didn't stop me from hanging up. The house echoed. I quickly learned to be alone. Your spouse is also your best friend. You spend so much time together. Once you start spending time with your emotional roller coaster, your mind starts playing strange games with you. I hated it. After a few weeks, loneliness caught up with me. I texted Elena, "Coffee?" I filed for divorce. She replied quickly, "I know. I'm working on an article today. Lunch tomorrow?" "Can you come closer to where I work?" "Sure, I'll pick you up at the office. What time?" "Noon, for sure." "I can't wait. See you tomorrow." Her optimism lifted my spirits. That evening, I turned on the TV to watch the report she was working on. Elena was hosting a charity event. She knows how to win over an audience. I set an alarm on my phone so I wouldn't miss lunch. When an old, inexpensive sedan pulled up beside me and the window rolled down, I smiled. Damn, considering her local success, I just assumed it would be some kind of expensive sports car. "What's funny?" "Your car. I didn't expect to see an old model." "Yeah, well, I can buy a new one if you want," she said, still smiling. "Start that old clunker and let's go to lunch." "Jerk!" She squeezed my hand. After a short drive, I walked Elena into a diner. 10 minutes later, our sandwiches arrived, and I paid for them despite her protests. Elena whined, "I suggested lunch, so I should pay." "Don't worry about it. Considering where you could have taken me, I got off easy." "Well, I wanted to pay and save some money. I thought TV stars made a lot of money." "Not us reporters. We're all hoping to become hosts. They get paid a lot more than I do. If the viewers don't like you, it's endless internships." "My article should help, right?" "Yes, I've gained a lot of followers on social media, but enough about me. How are you holding up?" "So-so. The emotional ups and downs have affected my sleep. I'm depressed and cynical about everything." "I know it will take time, but if you're looking for female company, I still have strong feelings for you." Elena squeezed my hand as she said this. "Thanks. You're right. I need time. I feel very vulnerable right now. My parents think I need to see a psychologist to deal with this. I'm starting to think they're right." Lunch was great. Even if there had been no other reason besides lunch with a friend, my day would have been much better. My parents' counselor did wonders for my self-esteem. The standard reaction to discovering infidelity was exactly the same as mine. Those who had gone through it before me gave me the advice I needed to cope with the situation. Before the divorce was finalized, Roxy changed her last name and moved out of town. Her bad reputation must have been unbearable for her. A month later, I was divorced. Elena's message caught my attention. "Congratulations on your divorce. Want to have dinner? It's on me. Let me know when. And check out the detailed report on Sunday." "Sunday evening?" I replied. On the split screen, I watched a local show that Elena had recommended. The guest was Lance Smith, an expert in database hacking. He talked about computers and databases. It was pretty boring unless you were a computer genius. I recognized him as the expert who had been called in at the beginning of the sex offender scandal. "The state recently upgraded its database security system and hired my company to test it. In a week, we were able to show that, if we wanted to, we could reproduce the same leak that happened a few months ago with the teachers. We presented our findings to the state a week ago. Our previous proposal to improve security was rejected in favor of a cheaper solution. Now that proposal has been accepted." Although it was interesting, I wondered why Elena wanted me to look into it. I didn't consider it a date, so I wasn't nervous. Elena was just taking the opportunity to let me know she was available, right? Her old sedan picked me up at exactly 5:30. She was dressed to impress, and she succeeded. She showed a lot of skin, everywhere. After some flirting, drinks, and dinner, we enjoyed coffee with a little something extra. Why did you want me to look at that database this morning? For a couple of reasons. First, it has to do with your ex-wife's case. And second, Lance is my older brother. No way! He did a great job. Must run in the family. Blushing, she replied, "Thank you, sir. Did you know he has a daughter in the same class as Roxy?" I didn't know that. Small world. When I interviewed you live on air, you said you wouldn't be angry at whoever was behind the hack and the leak. Do you still feel that way? I thought before answering. Yes, it had shaken my life, but not the leak. It was because Roxy had cheated on me. And for what? For thrills? Like a teenager? What a waste of time. I won't be angry. This is all hypothetical. I have a little story. Let's say there was a young woman who was madly in love. She thought the love of her life felt the same way. Our heroine, ironically, was a communications specialist who couldn't express her feelings to this man. Then a sneaky bitch stole him from her. Our heroine, heartbroken, moved on with her life. She became a reporter for a local TV station. When the fall ratings season approached, the TV station decided to do a report on workplace romances. Her niece told her that her teacher was having an affair, so it made perfect sense to do a report on that teacher. Her brother was very upset that his daughter was close to such a teacher. He was very good with computers. When our heroine found out that the teacher was a lying bitch, she came up with a plan. Her brother, who at first didn't want to participate, was humiliated, ridiculed, and mocked until he agreed to carry out her plan. I couldn't believe my ears. Elena continued with a smirk. Hypothetically speaking. Still wide-eyed, I whispered, "Thank you." "I still love you," Elena said quietly, her eyes filling with tears. "Do you think your heroine will be able to win back the love of her life?" "In an ideal world, yes. But only time will tell," she said, wiping away a tear. Meeting no resistance from me, Elena led me to her bedroom. We had been close in our youth, but her body had developed beautifully. She slowly undressed and then began to tease me with light touches and kisses. Never having been in such a state before, I wasn't ready for the passion Elena showered on me. It was much better than sex after a fight. I knew I'd be useless on Monday, so when dawn broke, I called work and said I was sick. Elena wasn't so lucky. She had a morning assignment. We parted in the morning, promising to do it again soon. Evening came quickly, and it was already 7 o'clock. Elena and I were in no hurry. There was no reason to rush into a relationship. We both knew where it would lead, and we didn't want any negative publicity. I was surprised at how many marriage proposals Elena received every week. There are many lonely men in the world. A year and a week after this story became public knowledge, Elena and I got married. Her TV channel made a lot of money from it. For obvious reasons, Lance tries to avoid both Elena and me. His computer company is thriving. When Elena said, "We need to talk," a year later, my heart skipped a beat. "I'm listening." "I've been offered a job as a presenter." "That's great. Congratulations. Why are you so sad?" "I'll have to move." "No, we have to move." "Really? You don't mind moving?" "I'll find a job." "You have to say yes." Now, Elena is a big shot in a small town. Her news channel followed both of her pregnancies. She's very popular in the community. I don't mind being Mr. Wallace at her parties. Roxy sends birthday and anniversary cards. All she writes is, "I'm sorry. I have a wife and family, so it would be inappropriate to respond."